Alright, so Audi has finally unveiled the production version of the Audi A6 and S6 e-Tron, both the hatchback in this case, not a sedan, and we're also going to have the internal combustion engine versions later on unveiled this year, so we're going to have both electric versions of the A6 and internal combustion versions for 2025. So we're going to have a look at this design from front, side, and rear. It looks very similar to the concept that was unveiled in 2021, I believe. It looks almost identical to that, which is not a bad thing at all. And of course, we need to talk about this interior and what's going on with the screen bonanza going on with Audi and pretty much all manufacturers these days. We talked so much about that before. Before jumping into Photoshop, though, let's have a look at this article from Car and Driver and let's see what this A6 and S6 is all about. So 2025 Audi A6 and S6 e-Tron further electrify Audi's lineup. You have the new models will join the gasoline-powered A6 and S6. For 2025, we expect the A6 e-Tron to start around 70 grand and the more performance-oriented S6 e-Tron to top out at the $90,000 range. These cars are just becoming insanely expensive. You know what I want to see? I want to see car manufacturers have a specific lineup where you don't just force so much tech into the cars. Just keep them basic and have a cool looking, clean design for people who don't want to spend $70,000, $90,000 for a car. Maybe in the 40, 50K range. Is still expensive, but with less technology, because I don't think everybody wants everything that comes with this price point. So you have around 70,000 for the rear drive version with 362 horsepower, rising to 80,000 for the 422 horsepower A6 e-Tron, and cresting over 90,000 for the 543 horsepower S6 e-Tron when it goes on sale late next spring. All versions get a shapely new body. I think the body exterior design looks better than the new A5 and S5 that I just reviewed a couple of weeks back. And as the Sportback name implies, there's a hatch around the back. The large taillight is made up of OLED lights that can be configured via the settings menu in the car to change the look of the rear end. I don't think that will be available in the US. You can do it for the front lights, but not the rear lights. I do think that's the regulation currently in right here. So the rest of the world gets the even better looking Avant, which is the wagon version of these cars. And unfortunately, same thing there. We just don't get the wagons here. I don't understand why. I want to have more wagons here. They imported the RS6 Avant, which sold very well. So it would make sense that we, bring the wagon of the new A6 and S6 over here as well. But that's not happening, I guess. Interior, you have a large curved panel that has an infotainment display measuring 14.5 inches, and the driver display that measures 11.9 inches. We do wish, here is what Car and Driver says, we do wish for more options for the gauge cluster. Not sure how configurable this is, but I hope it's very configurable because it's all made up of pixels, so why not? Current Audis do it better, and I completely agree with that. There's an optional 14.5-inch display in addition to these two displays that sits right here, right in front of the passenger. And we're going to talk about this integration here. I have no idea what's going on with this little screen right here and this border for this main infotainment screen here. So this 14.5-inch display for the passenger seat for them to play games or watch videos. Have a 94.4 kilowatt-hour battery, likely to provide a 350-mile range. Sounds pretty good as well. Up to 270 kilowatt charging speeds on a DC fast charger. Also good if you're going to have an EV, you got to focus on the charging times, because that's, I think, is the biggest worry for buyers of EVs these days. So 10 to 80% in about 21 minutes. Not too bad at all. The base single motor A6 e-Tron should hit 60 miles per hour in 5.2 seconds. The two motor A6 e-Tron Quattro reduces that time to 4.3 seconds. And then you have the S6 e-Tron going from 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. I wonder if it's going to put out an RS6 e-Tron. That would be pretty cool to see, but that's also probably going to be around $120,000. So eventually, the internal combustion powered A6 will exit production, leaving only the electric versions. So let's jump into Photoshop here. Let's have a look at these designs. The Sportback versions, both of these cars, as you can see. And I think this is the first time that I actually prefer the non-S version for an Audi, because I think the S here, it looks pretty good, but I don't really like these silver pieces that we have here, even though I kind of see that this is an evolution of the silver side mirrors that we used to have back in the early 2000s all the way up to, I don't know, to today, because we still have a silver side mirror right here. And then we have the normal A6 here. You can see that the side mirror on this one has the camera version for the side mirrors, which is also not allowed here in the United States. So we're probably going to get just, you know, the regular side mirror like we have here on the S6. But as I said, this looks very much like the concept that was unveiled in 2021. I like the design of this better than the new A5 and S5 because I think this has less busy front end, specifically the A6 here. But one thing that I would prefer of the A5, again, is that we do have the headlights unit being in line in combination with the daytime light. Here, you can see that we have this modifiable LEDs up here. You can configure these and do whatever you want with these. And then you have the main headlights sitting down here. So we do have, I would say this is a, could we call this a bumper headlight, because it sits still pretty far up, but it's separated by this bodywork right here. So I would call this a bumper headlight for the new A6. We also have the blacked out graphics here. Looks a little complex, but thankfully it's all blacked out in this case for the A6, so it melts into the rest of the features that goes on in the front end. You have a big grill down here for cooling the battery. As you can see, the normal A6 will most likely have an opening right here in the normal section for the grill. Now looking at the S6 here, they look very similar. We do have this area is probably the only area that I can see is a little bit different, because as you can see, it's all silver as we talked about, and this panel is all just a piece of black plastic right here. So it sort of looks like the A6 is a little bit more complex in the design in the front end, comparing it to the S6 right here. But the one thing that I would want to do for this S6 is just black this silver piece out. Maybe you could do some, if I were to get this, I would probably just do some wrap and wrap that piece black and just have the silver side mirrors. Now looking at the side view here, you can clearly tell that this is an EV, because similar to what we have on the new 5 Series, even though the 5 Series come in both i5 and then you have the internal combustion versions, you can still see that the lower section here sits so low to the ground. And this is emphasized even more by having this piece be body colored right here. And this is, of course, where the battery lives. So it means that hatchbacks and sedans of these proportions today, if we're going to have them be EVs, they need to sit a little higher than what they used to sit before. But thankfully, we do have a very thin greenhouse here, a typical Audi design with this sloping roofline. No Hofmeister kink here like we have in BMWs. Audis has always had this sharp corner in the back. As you can see, the overall line flow here, I really like it, because we have this line down here connecting a little bit to this corner in the front end, and definitely has a very clear connection right here in the rear. We also have this black graphic down here going through the rear axle and have a clear connection in the rear end. Looks like, let's see if we can see that on the S6 here. We do have, I think we have 2 shoulder lines here maybe. One shoulder line that goes up here, very tight to the greenhouse, right beneath it. And then we have this line as well going from the corner of the taillight and creating this muscle over the rear axle. Looking like it plants the car pretty nicely. And overall, the proportions doesn't look specifically, if we discount the height of this new car, it does have pretty normal proportions. It doesn't look like a blob like Mercedes EQ's cars that have this type of styling to it. This actually has a clearly defined hood, and it looks like it could potentially house an internal combustion engine underneath there. I'm not sure if Audi is actually going to use this same body to create the internal combustion version of the 2025 A6, or if they're going to create a brand new design for the internal combustion engine. I'm not entirely sure, but if I look at these proportions, it looked like it could maybe be an internal combustion as well, similar to what BMW did with the 5 Series again. Now this is by far my favorite view for the new A6 and S6. Again, we have this silver piece here on the S6, which I think looks better. This silver piece looks way better on the rear end than it does in the front, because it doesn't take up too much space in the rear. But I still prefer the normal A6 here, because it's all blacked out. We have a nice looking diffuser, pretty similar diffuser to what we have on the S6. I'm not sure if it's entirely exactly the same, just different colors on these features here. Silver here, as you can see, and silver up top, but I do think it's the exact same diffuser for the A6 like we have on the S6 here, and that is the main reason why I prefer the A6. It just looks a little bit more subtle. The graphics doesn't scream at you that much. And we also have on the S6 an additional lip spoiler up here, which looks pretty good. Nail spoiler, as Audi calls them when they have them up there. And the taillights, as you know, can be configurable in European and in international versions, but that's not something that we're going to get here in the United States, since it is against regulations at the moment. We didn't talk about the wheels, but the same goes for the wheels. Honestly, I prefer the A6 wheels here. I think they look better than the S6 wheels. I wish the S6 wheels had a lot more sportier design to them. This looks like a normal base A6 wheels for the S6. Maybe they saved that for the RS6, which might be coming later. Now here we have some big differences here between these two, S6 and the A6. First of all, the A6 in this case has these camera mirrors. You can see that these are then projected into these small little cameras here on the side. I think that's a pretty cool idea, even though I don't mind having just regular old mirrors. This just feels like something that could, another thing that could fail and break, and it's going to cost you a lot in repairs. I also like the sizing of these normal mirrors, because side mirrors to me is a big part of the design itself. These look like it's been amputated or something right there in the door. But looking at the interiors here overall with the screen layout that we have here, in this case I do prefer, if I were to pick one, I'm going to go with the S6 here, because it has a much darker vibe to it. I really like that, even though they look very, very similar. Now, the screens here, look at the integration of the gauge cluster and this outline of it. The outline of the gauge cluster going into the infotainment screen, looking very interesting. I'm not sure why Audi decided to stylize or design it like this. We have a completely empty space here, completely empty space here as well, and it doesn't feel like it has a, you know, it doesn't feel like it has a nice home in this interior. And then you have this optional little 14.5 screen here for the passenger that just clashes right into this corner here. And it's a completely static looking screen on the side that feels like it does not belong in this interior whatsoever. And as you know, I definitely prefer the 2023 interiors of Audi, where you have the fully configurable, fully digital gauge cluster, but it's sat within a nice housing, and you also had an infotainment screen that looked a little bit better integrated than this. So I don't think this is moving forward. I think this, in my opinion, is moving backwards when it comes to the integration and the styling of the interiors. And same goes for the steering wheel. Not a big fan of this chiseled looking steering wheel. I do prefer the 2023 model years here as well, even though we do have a flat bottom steering wheel for both the A6 and the S6 in this case. A lot of buttons here. I do believe that everything is now also inside of the main infotainment screen. So they ditched the separate screen that like we used to have down here for the climate control settings on 2023 model years, and now everything, which is the trend right now, everybody's doing this, just putting everything into a lower section on the bar on the infotainment screen. So overall, this new refresh, I kind of like the design styling, the design vibes, the identity of Audi, where they're headed. And Audi has always been in the forefront when it comes to customizing your lights. The headlights and the taillights. They started with the, as you know, the 2007 Audi R8 was the first car to have LED daytime run lights, and they've been experimenting with light designs ever since. So the exterior design, huge fan of the exterior design. I can see this if you put the correct wheels on this, and if you just have it in a darker color, this would look really, really good. However, I do wish we could have this beautiful exterior with the interior of a 2023 model year. That would be my perfect Audi A6.